Today on History, Bleeding Kansas. One of the most violent bouts over slavery in U.S. history, Bleeding Kansas was defined by years of turbulent settling in the newly acquired Western territories, putting pro- and anti-slavery folk against each other in a rush to establish a new state.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on Bleeding Kansas. It all started with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. The Kansas-Nebraska Act was the turning point in much of U.S. history during the 1820s and 1850s. Now, written by Senator Stephen A. Douglas, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was made to overrule the previous Missouri Compromise. Now, the Missouri Compromise made an imaginary line that split the country in half, so between the North and the South. Above the line, slavery was not allowed, and below the line, slavery was allowed. The Kansas-Nebraska Act allowed slavery to be in the North if it won by popular sovereignty. As usual, one side, the North, was mad, and the other side, the South, was not. The South was all for the new act. So of course this led to tensions rising, and the North was mad, and the South was mad, and it would later lead to Bleeding Kansas. So what is the Missouri Compromise? Well, the Missouri Compromise is a measure that was worked out between the North and the South to divide up the country into slave and non-slave states. The North was against slavery while the South was pro-slavery. So around 1819, Congress requested for Maine and Missouri to become part of the Union. Maine would be a free state and Missouri would be a slave state. But slavery was banned from the majority of the Louisiana Purchase. So, Henry Clay, famous runner for U.S. President extraordinaire, devised a plan where Maine was admitted as a free state and Missouri as a slave state, better known as the Compromise of 1850. In this, the Compromise of 1850 stated that if a state wished to be admitted, it would have to wait until another state wished to be a state in order to be admitted as a state, and therefore given the title of being a slave state or a non-slave state. That's a lot of statements. But this all changed with popular sovereignty.
The Compromise of 1850 allowed popular sovereignty in the areas designated as California, did not allow slavery from the land acquired from Mexico, established the boundary between Texas and Mexico, let the U.S. pay Texas's debt, and allowed slavery in D.C.
And the fugitive slave law was admitted in the South.
That too. By this time, Clay's Compromise of 1850 was more or less overshadowed by both the Missouri Compromise and the Kansas-Nebraska Act, so who really cared about it anymore? Yeah, that's right, nobody.
Now on to Bleeding Kansas. Now contrary to what you may think, Bleeding Kansas was not the whole state of Kansas covered in blood. More like an eighth or fourth, or it's really unclear because the history book doesn't say, but after the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed, slavery was regulated by popular sovereignty. We already discussed that. And the first state to open popular sovereignty was Kansas, of course. And Kansas was excellent for farming, and many Southerners were like, yes, I got my basic rights to slavery, I'm gonna go down to Kansas and take the slaves with me. And many Northerners did not like that, so they said that they were going to go down there and stop slavery because it was morally wrong, as learned from the Enlightenment periods, and so on and so on. Okay, many Southerners from Missouri also crossed the border to vote in Kansas illegally. They were called border ruffians because they were rough or borderline rough, I guess? Okay, well, we don't really know for sure, but the vote of Kansas, before it could actually happen, chaos erupted, and many Southerners decided to attack anti-slavery Northerners. The attackers ransacked the towns and destroyed the villages, newspapers, stole goods, and even burned down houses and buildings. No really big deal, but the tensions escalated and caused fighting between Northerners and Southerners and lots of licentious behavior, so...
Hey, Ma, look at this. If enough of us go to Kansas and we vote against slavery, then we'll have another anti-slavery state.
I hear there's some very good farmland in Kansas. I could set up a plantation and have a ton of slaves! Ha 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 ha!
Can't wait to start a clean new life in a free state without slaves.
Can't wait to bring slaves into this soon-to-be state.
Okay, meet me in the trail, it's going down. Meet me in the mall, it's going down. Meet me in the club, it's going down. Anywhere you meet me, guaranteed to go down. Meet me in the trail, it's going.
Hey, I think this should be a free state.
Slave state.
No, free state.
Slave state.
Gosh darn it, free state.
Slave state!
One of the most famous examples of a person who was willing to fight to end slavery was John Brown. This rambunctious abolitionist was later known for his failed raid at Harper's Ferry. In October of 1855, Brown came to Kansas to fight slavery. Brown quickly gained many followers. Soon, Brown used his small army to attack the farms and homes of those who supported slavery. Although John Brown was not the first to turn to violence in Kansas, he greatly popularized it.
Slavery is a pure abomination of our Lord's teachings.
Yeah.
We need to go to Kansas and fight those slavery peoples.
Yeah.
We need to go all Old Testament on them.
Yeah.
He was relentless.
So as I was saying, slavery is a great part of this good news.
Oh my goodness. No.
No slavery.
Of course, John Brown's raids ended up being a failure, leading to the death of both he and his sons. Eventually, Bleeding Kansas took the lives of over 200 people. A tragedy in American history.
Bleeding Kansas was a turning point in America's view of slavery. It made people take a stand, an action which was good. This, however, proved that slavery would be an issue that many Americans eventually would die for. However, the rallies and violence between the senators erupted from this controversial idea.
Bleeding Kansas clearly showed that America split into two sides, pro-slavery and those anti-slavery. Slavery has always been a controversial issue, of course, and well, ever since people were oppressed, slavery has been opposed. So, some Americans are finding slavery morally wrong, while others are finding it spiritually moral because of the Great Awakening. Since the event of Bleeding Kansas, America was able to vote on if they wanted slavery or not.
Thus, Americans would be able to make the right choice, which was obviously pro-slavery. You always do this. It was obviously slavery that was really good to the economic basis of the South. Just saying.
Slavery was morally wrong, and everybody agrees with that. Here nowadays, we think, oh, so yeah, slavery, that must be wrong. But back then, they needed a change. Who knows how society would have turned out today if we didn't stop slavery?
Blah, blah, blah. Slavery is obviously so much better because we get so much more done with slaves. I mean, come on, what's better than slaves?
Well, honestly, paying people, giving them rights, letting them vote.
Blah, blah, blah.
If you say blah, blah, blah one more time, I'm gonna have a Bleeding Kansas right now.